You're listening to the Moms Working Overtime podcast, the community of women you've been searching to find for so long. We bring together our mamas in waiting, brand new moms, stay-at-home moms, working moms, and the moms who maybe just have a little bit more experience than the rest of us. We're all here for community, support, and finding ways to show up better for our families each and every day. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I hope you love what you find on today's episode. Welcome back to the Moms Working Overtime podcast for our Thursday interview series. And I think I say this every time, but I'm going to say it again. I have a really special guest for us today. I am going to be introducing you all to my girl, Mica, and she is part of Rested Mama Happy Baby, which is a team of pediatric sleep training professionals. And it's insane what they are capable of and all of the knowledge that they have when it comes to this. Y'all know that my kids don't sleep. So I'm here to learn just like you. This is going to be an incredible episode. And what I want to do is first allow you to get to know Mica, because I know that especially in the mom space, it's so powerful when we can not only learn from other moms, but we can connect with them. We can connect with their stories. I know I certainly do. And so I want to give you that same opportunity. So we will get started and let Mica introduce herself, and then she will teach you all that she has to know when it comes to sleep training, and we'll give you plenty of resources so you can explore their services to help you the way that I know it's going to help me. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, I have two kids. And honestly, after my first kid, I didn't think that I was going to be able to have a second kid, for a lot of different reasons. But I have an 8-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. And so living in Southern California. We moved out of the city area now, in Temecula Valley. So I live in Murrieta. It's a lot slower pace. I don't think I ever thought I would move here when I was younger, but when you are a mom and a wife, it's probably the best decision that we made. So my husband, now we have swapped roles, since I know we'll talk about previous, but now he's on the road all the time, and I have made the transition to small business owner as a pediatric sleep coach. But we also certify others to help them become pediatric sleep coaches, probably really relevant to, what we're talking about now. And then also do some marketing and business support, which is what kind of where my past life is. So that's where we are now. My daughter is a full-on turned dancer performer. And my son is definitely going to be a performer of some sort. I don't know what, but there's a lot of testosterone in there, and I feel like he likes center of attention as well. And fun little fact is that we just finished our first year of homeschool, which I also never thought that we would ever do.
Yay.
So, yeah, that is life today. Small business, teacher, homeschool, mom, everything.
It's just proof. And, I was just talking to a friend about this. I said, moms are incredible. They're actually the best employees you could possibly have, because even when we step away from work, right? Traditional corporate world work, look at us. Look at all the things that
I
we do. We're
know.
like, no big deal. I have the kids home. We're homeschooling. We run a business, two
No
businesses.
worries.
Like, no big deal. It's so fun though. And I can tell that just from talking to you, I can tell we're going to have so much in common. We'll be able to bring this into all the questions, but I let you know that I have a question, and my audience has grown to love this over the interview series. So let's start here, and then we'll get into more about your
Okay.
businesses. So Mica, before you were a mom, who was that person? If we can even remember, now it's like our identity, but who were you before you were a mom? And are you the kind of mom that you expected yourself to be?
Oh my gosh. It makes me laugh because I don't think you ever really know until you get to the point where you have to change your identity.
Mhm.
But I first of all, if it tells you anything, when I was growing up all the way through college, I thought I was going to work for the CIA. Like, that's honestly what I thought. I mean, there was no thought of family in my mind. I was the oldest of 9 cousins, and I was, 8, 9 years older than them. I'm 12 years older than my brother. I mean, I guess I just knew that children were hard. And I had worked with kids my entire life. But I knew that when I graduated that maybe I wasn't, well, I thought maybe I wasn't going to. And didn't end up going that route, but I did end up going down the technology route. So I was in, SaaS. At some point, I pulled fiber when fiber optics was, a thing. And we were pulling them for master plan communities. And I got into project management and then I got into consulting management and I did the whole managing director thing and I moved into a software medical space. And then at that time, I was thinking, like, I know what my role is in life, because you're always thinking about what is your purpose?
Yes.
Yeah, like, why are we here? Okay, well, in my head, I was like, well, I have to figure out what I'm leaving as a mark to the legacy of whatever that legacy is. And I'm like, I am meant to show that minority woman can make it in a male-dominated industry, and I'm gonna get that seat at the table. And so my life was really focused on making my mark in a company and finding a seat at the table, which meant that I mean, I would always type A, but find myself, trying to fit this mold of, being, not too pushy because or emotional because I'm a woman, but also learning how to influence others. And also, I mean, I looked always younger than what I was, and that made it worse. And I can tell you that I have been at a dinner with 10 executives, like a nice dinner, we're all in suits, and I'm leading this $90 million business, and I get carded.
Oh
It
my
just
goodness.
it totally takes away from my
Like, come
credibility. But I
on.
was like so ready to just prove something. And that's what I did. I went to grad school because I thought that's kind of what you do. I found my husband there. I did the whole traditional path. And then it changed for me. I think I kind of actually went through an identity crisis because I was so sure for so long that that's what I was meant to do. And frankly, I was good at it. Like, I remember when I left, someone telling me that I was almost not in the wrong, but oh, how could you stop doing those things? Because
Oh my gosh,
like,
Mika, you're
you're
like,
good
are
at
you
this.
telling my story? I relate to
I
this
felt like
so
I was
much.
going to.
It's like, how could you? What are you
How
thinking?
could you? Like, oh, you're so lucky you could do these things and you can have those things and you can have that. Like, you're so good at it. Like, you're really gonna give it up. But then on the other end, I had turned into full on the mom who was on conference calls at birthday parties.
Mhm.
And I was missing, I like my daughter fell down the stairs while I was in another state, and I could not think of anything else but coming back.
Mhm.
But my husband didn't tell me because he didn't want me to try to leave early. So he told me like super late, but when it wasn't like I was there was no time for me to come back. So yeah, I mean that was me. That's what I thought. And then I had my daughter, and I was so conflicted because I thought even leading up to that, I read all the books. I think my husband even bought me a book that was like, "Honey, you can have it all," because I was so scared that you couldn't.
Mhm.
And and I think my initial thought was when I had a baby and I was trying to think about what it was going to be like to go back to work, I was like, "Oh my God, you can't." What a lie. They lied to
Truly.
me. I'm like, "What did I do?" And then not to mention you have to keep a marriage going, and
Mhm.
that's hard work
Mhm.
too. And then I was gone, and I think it took me, well, then I was sleep deprived. And then I realized all the control that I had before when I could focus on myself, I had no control.
Mhm.
I had lost myself. I didn't feel great physically. I didn't feel great emotionally. And I didn't, it sounds bad, but when you are thriving at work and that's all you have, maybe one other relationship, you feel like you're doing it,
Mhm.
right? And
Right.
then you and then you add motherhood, And then that takes more away from what you can provide. And then nothing is good. Like nothing you're doing is good anymore. And then you're like, I am failing. I like,
I do think that this is the blessing and the curse of being a high achiever though. And this comes from our corporate experience, our career experience, where
yes,
when you work for a corporation, there's this clear path of climbing the ladder typically. And like if I work hard, I'm going to get this. And then I work harder, I'm going to get this. And it's so clear cut. And in motherhood, it's like you give everything you have and life is like, meh, maybe that was okay. Like
there's no results,
we'll tell you
there's
in
no
about 20 years.
feedback. There's no feedback, right?
There's
Like,
nothing. But I think we still have this like high achiever in us that's like more, do better and push yourself. And it's so tough in the motherhood realm to just find that new sense of normal and reset those expectations that I think we lived in for so long. And sleep is
yeah.
included in this. I think this is why so many moms are so hard on themselves because we feel this pressure to make it perfect and it becomes this really stressful situation. And so much relatability. I know that there's other women listening who are like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's totally me.
I mean, it's kind of nuts because I think that was the turning point was I was not sleeping and I felt like I mean, I read all the books through like 3 years because I felt like I was that paranoid that when I was gonna have a kid, I wasn't gonna be able to read anything. And I was like, I'm gonna read through everything I can until she's 3 years. Um, and honestly, I considered myself an academic. If I wasn't in this, I wanted to be a professor, and maybe I still will in the future. But I do love research and books and understanding where, why things happen. And I can tell you, I could have burned those books and not read them, and I would have been, I feel like, in the exact same situation for sleep. And I think it exacerbated what I was feeling. And I personally, and I think this maybe of especially high achieving moms who have these brains that run 1,000 miles a minute, we require more sleep than the normal person. And it's hard when you don't feel that because then your mind goes wild and then I think there was conflicts in the beginning because I was the first in my family to have a baby that everyone just kept telling me that it was normal, but I don't think they realized telling me that it was normal didn't make me feel better. It
Yes.
just made me feel like, well, I'm struggling and so this is normal, so everybody else is fine.
hmm We
How
just
in the
we're
world?
told to accept this
Accept it.
lower standard of life or lower quality of life.
I was like, this is, or, you signed up for it. You know that babies don't sleep. It's like, so we're supposed to be okay. But, sleep is a form of torture. So
Oh
how
my
am I
gosh, Mika, I say this
supposed
all the
to?
time. So you study like what they call Buds Week in the military and putting them through that. One of the main strategies for challenging them and pushing them to the
Yes,
brink of breaking is sleep deprivation. And
sleep
I'm like,
deprivation.
moms do that.
Moms do that. I know. It's so crazy. And that was kind of my turning point is
Mhm.
I very remember I had already gone back to work. I think both of my husband and I were putting our clothes inside out. Like that's how bad it was. I had cried over naps. I was sure that I was, not performing, and nobody had to tell me yes or no. I just felt it. And then I was
Exactly.
failing, I felt like I was failing motherhood because my daughter wasn't sleeping and they said she would sleep and it was all normal and it's so not normal. And my husband, it was I want to say maybe 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. And our sleep crutch was that we yoga bounced her to sleep.
Mhm.
So we sat on this yoga ball and it was his turn and I had to go to work. And I remember it had been an hour and a half he had been bouncing. He could not get her down. And he was like, "You have to just put her on the boob." And I was like, no, it's my turn. It's my turn to sleep. You're gonna have to figure this out. Like, and he was tired, right? It's not like he hadn't been trying for an
Mhm.
hour and a half. And that next morning, I remember he was like, "I don't know what we need to do, but isn't working. Like, we got to figure something out." So we ended up doing something about our sleep. And I know I'm talking a lot about this, but once we did and we got the help we needed, life was so different, and I couldn't believe like what I spent and what I did for that week, that I was so changed my mindset of what I thought motherhood could be for me.
Hmm.
Because I thought, like, when you're in the moment, you're thinking, oh my God, this is forever. I'm gonna
It,
die. Like,
it seems like a very, very dark black
it's so
hole.
dark. It's so dark. I was like, I don't know how long I can physically exist in this mental and physical space. Like, I don't even have the physical strength to work out, or even when they say, "Oh, you just need to fill your cup." Well, what if you can't even get up? How do you fill your cup? How do you do
Oh my
that?
gosh. Yes, absolutely. And so many moms feel this way. And I think this helplessness is something that you almost get in a state where you're like, this is my life. It's like anything, Meek. I even talk to our clients when it comes to their health and wellness goals. I'm like, you've been down this path of mistreating your body and having low energy and having all of these negative habits that you think this is just life now. And there's better. There's
There's
better out
better.
there. Let me show you. Let me show you. But that's where I think that today's episode is going to be most helpful, just to kind of shine the light and say there are options, there are things, there are professionals that can help you. So in becoming a pediatric sleep coach, before we even talk about sleep, this
Yeah.
sounds so basic, but it's one of the most common questions I get in my DMs is, Elena, when you start an interview with someone, can you have them explain what something actually is before you just dive in? Because I tend to just go head on into the conversation. So, Mica, what is sleep training? In your definition, what does this even include?
Yeah, so I love this question because I think this is one of the things when people do work with us or see our brand that I want to make sure that they understand. And if they realize and just think about what we're called Rested Mama Happy Baby. And it really does stem from our stories. Chelsea, the other half of Rested Mama Happy Baby, she has a very similar story on a different path, right? Which I think between the two of us, I feel like we capture most of most of the world of moms that go through that experience. Because, we really believe we want to throw out the thought that sleep is not a selfish thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? We get scared as moms that, we are asking for that sleep because we need it. And gosh, that's so
Mm-hmm.
selfish. But before we go into that, I want moms out there to understand that sleep is not a selfish thing. Your family needs you to be rested.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just you,
Mm-hmm.
because they need you to be on top of your game. They need you to be able to connect. And if I know women, and most moms and wives, like, you are the core of operations of why life is happening probably in your household.
We always
So,
say that moms are the thermostat of the home. And
yes,
so if mom is sleep deprived and low on patience and irritated or anything, the second that we show that emotion, immediately the whole room adopts it. So as moms,
yes.
we have to be really careful.
So it's not for you. It is for you, but it's not for you. Like, if you're really looking at it, it's so that you can have happy baby and rested baby, and, your family can feel that. So when we talk about sleep training, immediately people think Ferber or leave and check, because
Can you
I
explain what
know,
Ferber is for anyone that may not know who's
yes.
listening?
So I'm on all of these sleep training groups. I just like to watch, and I have been on them since my daughter's 8 now. So I've just never left the groups. And the main ones that people see are really Ferber and or Leave and Check. And so they focus on this thought that if you implement what's called independent sleep skills, when your child is able to fall asleep on their own without intervention, without feeding them or rocking them, that's going to be the magic recipe. And so if they just do that thing, which is why everyone has so much weight on sleep training, but then they also define sleep training as basically, you do a bedtime routine, you leave your child in their room, you walk out, you come back every 15 minutes. You basically put a timer on. That's leave and check, and that's for where it was popularized in the 80s. And there was a whole book on it. It's called Ferberizing. And there, there's a ton of evidence and it does work for a lot of people. But where we saw that there was a difference is just that is like you really can't just sleep train. And so when we work on that and we talk about it, we define sleep training as the process of which you are helping your child independently fall asleep with a routine that is consistent. So, what happens before that, what we do is going to be different than maybe what you just might read in a library book, because I know, because I feel like I read them all, or you see on a group post. So there's just different forms of sleep training. The 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 range that we like to educate is about less response and more response. And so there's basically a sleep training approach of which you can put them on a spectrum from less to more. And then there's give and take, based on them. And we don't like to discriminate. We're very evidence-based, right? So
Love
um,
that.
whatever you guys decide to do is what you decide to do. What our goal was to find a sleep training approach, not just sleep training, that allowed more families to be more successful with more education and that preparation.
I like the thought of a spectrum because I do feel like so many things in the motherhood advice realm are cookie cutter. And it's this
Yes.
it's this textbook schedule that you're supposed to follow, and success is defined by your baby falling in line or not, right? Which now that we have multiple children, we're like, why did I expect that
Yeah.
to work for all children? Like it may work for one. What worked for our son does not work for our daughter. She's like, you're gonna have
Yes.
to come up with something new. But I like the idea of it being on a spectrum because it does leave room for the child to have different tendencies or respond differently to different strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
no, please.
Whenever you think about the benefits of using a more flexible scale for or more flexible strategy for sleep training and just the benefits for moms, I know that after coaching hundreds of families at this point with sleep training, maybe even upwards of thousands now, I know that you have seen everything. So what are some of the benefits that parents report to you that maybe aren't always highlighted or marketed? I mean, yes, everyone gets more sleep, but there's more to that, which you've hinted at. So I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah. So in the last 2 years, we have helped 2,500 families.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
It's a
amazing.
lot.
Hundreds. Yeah, blowing that out of the water.
2,500.
Look at me just offending you over here.
And which is amazing because never did we intend that we'd actually be able to help families internationally. So we actually have a ton of families in Europe, and we've helped families in Dubai and India, and which
Amazing.
India is a really interesting culture because culturally sleep training is really not accepted in general. It's like you have a kid, you co-sleep. That's what you do. Doing
Mhm.
anything different is more than just mom guilt. It's like culturally unacceptable. And we've had to help a lot of families, make that decision on their own, right? We're not here to break any cultural norms. We're very much of the mindset of what works for you as a family, only you can decide. So people always ask us, how do I know? How do I know that I should sleep train? It's like, well, honestly, you down inside know. And if
Everything
it's,
about motherhood, there's this
yeah,
there's an organ in there that they
we're
don't
not
call
here
it
to tell
anything, but it
you.
tells you everything you need to know.
If you're considering it because something's unsustainable, that's why. So in, the families that we worked with, one big thing is we don't just sleep train. So we actually say that all the time is we don't just sleep train, really focus on really what it's like to embrace sleep as a whole. Because if you just sleep train one, most families will not be successful. That's why you see some of those horror posts on some of the Facebook groups like, okay, well, I tried it yesterday. Well, that's actually not the approach you want to take because if it was that fast and that consistent, we'd probably not need pediatric sleep coaches. There's an approach to it. There's many factors. But when you do it right, I mean, I could cry with some of the things that we get. I mean, like we've actually asked, we went and interviewed some of our old grads and we're like, what did it mean for you? And I know it's funny because this resonated with me. One mom was like, I had a baby right after because I felt like, oh my gosh, I could do motherhood. Like this
Yes.
is so doable. So
Because
for
people
her,
decide whether or not to
yeah,
have more children based on their experiences with
based on their,
sleep.
yeah.
Yes.
And she's like, my husband wanted to, and like, I just didn't know. And she's like, after we worked with you guys, oh my gosh, I can actually have more kids.
Mhm.
I could do this, knowing that there's resources out there. I know another mom, this is kind of an extreme case, but she had doubted motherhood completely. She was a single mom, and she had listened to all the advice, meaning like, don't worry, they'll figure it out. Go ahead and co-sleep. Go ahead and let them sleep whenever. They're going to sleep whenever they want to. And so her daughter was 13 weeks old and had on average ever slept about 8 hours total in a 24-hour period. So standards or what we have as sleep goals is we at that age we really want to see closer to about 15. So there's quite a deficit there.
Mhm.
She had before she come to us, obviously went to MTs and then went to actually a doctor, a pediatrician, who which this is not a knock on pediatricians. I'm going to say that there, but they will tell you they are not educated in pediatric sleep, right?
Yes.
They are there to focus on growth. But what they do know is Ferber. So that's what you'll
Mhm.
hear all the time.
Mhm.
And that's what they will base their decisions off of. Asked her if she was providing her baby stimulants because he could not figure out
Mhm.
why. And she had tried Ferber, leave and check. And after working with us, I think it took us a week to really get her situated. Baby was sleeping about 15 hours and 10 hours at night. And it gave her relief that like she wasn't doing anything wrong as a mom,
Mhm.
because that's all you hear.
Yes.
We hear things all the time, like it gives them time back with their second. So if you have another child, to actually be able to put down one child and spend some time with your older child. But there's so many things. I mean, for me, it gave me time to figure out what my new identity was going to be. And that was really important because, like, I had lost my old one and I thought
Yes.
I was failing because I had lost it and I was filling the box. I think the key thing to realize is, like, when you're going through that tough time and you are a mom, is like, it's not that you failed, it's just that we're going to live a longer time. And so it's probably time for a new identity.
Yes.
And that's what it meant for me. I mean, I'm not a
Mhm.
very nice wife when I'm not sleeping.
But truly, it just impacts so many things. Like we said, the mom is just an influence in so many different things in the family unit. And when you can change her way to recharge, just imagine how moms can show up. So if you're a mom listening and you're feeling just this sense of dread every night, because that's what happened. We've gone through this with our children and especially with different sleep regressions and things like that, which I do want to hear your opinion on later in the podcast. But I know that 7 o'clock would hit and I would feel this sense of dread. Like, I know
Yes.
what I'm in for. I don't know if I can do this another night. And of course, we're moms and we do it another night, but it's not fulfilling. It's not a way to live. But just hearing you tell those stories, it honestly makes me think of something. I literally just shared it on my Instagram story yesterday. I pulled it up to read it. Is your purpose is not the thing that you do. It's the thing that happens in others when you do what you do.
Yes.
And
I love
it
that.
just gives me chills to think about because that's what it's all about. That's why we both do what we do. And I think if you can change a mom's experience in motherhood, you change so much more about her than just her experience in motherhood. And it could lead to her growing her family more or showing up for other children better. And when we pour into our children better, we impact the world for years and years to come in ways that we don't even understand in those little moments. But it's huge. It's so
So
huge. I love
true.
it.
It's so true. I mean, moms are superheroes, but we also have a kryptonite and we're also, mortal and
And that kryptonite is sleep.
yes.
So, Mika, what would you say when it comes to sleep training in your experiences? What would you say are the misconceptions that people have about either infant sleep in general, toddler sleep even, or just the topic of sleep training?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that for sure is misunderstanding what sleep training is.
Hmm.
Because we've evolved it so much to have it be either cry it out or just leave and check, which is a lot what I mentioned a lot of families do because that's what's easily available and probably the least complicated online. And so you're gonna get mixed results if you don't understand. That's only a portion of sleep. So that's one thing is maybe misunderstanding what sleep training means. And then, a lot of people, they feel a lot of things when they hear sleep training. And I think that maybe the 1.2 of that is, thinking that sleep training is selfish or harmful. If you are doing it the right way and you are actually reading the real evidence around sleep training, no matter whether you are on the less responsive or more responsive side, if you are doing it properly and you are responding to your child the rest of their life and the rest of their day, there is absolutely no evidence that sleep training is harmful. A lot of what comes up all the time for those who feel that way, because it's probably fed into their guilt, their research pieces that compare the impact of cortisol on babies to the babies in a Russian orphanage. Totally different. You guys feel free to look into it. They
I can
actually
think
did.
of
Yeah.
I can think of such similar situations when it comes to nutrition and where people pull their research and I'm
Oh
like,
my
do you
gosh.
know where that study came from?
It's
I mean,
like,
I
well,
don't want to rain on your parade, but that study was very incredible.
yeah, and taken and actually the researchers that published that have come out publicly and said like this was grossly misused. And so just know if you're, doing the right things, your relationship with your child is based on your long-term relationship with your child and what you do 90% of the time, and not what happens on 1 to 2 days. Crying is not bad. It's how you respond and what you do with that consistently. And I would say the second thing that I would say that most families don't realize is when we talk about getting baby, newborn, or a toddler better sleep, believe it or not, sleep training is like 10% of that approach. So we actually call it a sleep cake. That's how we teach it. Every child has a preference to a specific cake, right? Some kids like chocolate, some like red velvet, and your ingredients are going to be different. Some like it, really dense, and some like it not so. And and when you think about what sleep training is, it's like 10% of that is independent sleep skills. The rest of that is everything else. And so if you think you're going to make a cake with just flour, you're not going to get cake. And that's what we always say. That's the biggest misconception. If you think you're just going to do that, you're not really. If you accidentally add water and egg to it because it's something that you were doing before, maybe you'll get a semblance of it and that's good enough for you. But if you actually want solid, good sleep with the right foundation, it is about getting the right ingredients, which is what we talk about. So having that preparation, if you don't have the right schedule or if you're getting it online, you're you probably are going to find that your cake's not going to come out so right. And then that's, I think, the number three, my top three. So that third tip is um, there is no sleep approach that is one size fits all that will work. And so when you hear that, like, oh, it worked for this one and this one, okay, great. Their cakes happen to be really similar. But understanding that every child actually is, I mean, we know this, but we
Mhm.
don't think about it when we read those books. Every child is biologically different. And so if you aren't matching your approach or your schedule to your specific child, it usually doesn't turn out very well. So
Mhm.
anything that's cookie cutter or anything that feels like it's not, or it's just like the person next door, usually doesn't turn out really well.
And I know that you both at Rested Mama Happy Baby have developed a method, association fading, and You don't have to give all of the information, but just to briefly explain, because also mamas who are listening, you know I do this every single episode. There's going to be tons of links in the podcast description, okay? Don't feel like you have to remember anything she's saying. You will not have to Google search her. So you'll go to the description to click any links and find out more about this. But Mica, if you could just touch on what your signature method is and what that looks like.
Yeah, so we also have a free training because what we do, we like to make sure you realize is a little different in how we approach it. So we'll have a free training link that Alana will have, and basically we go into four different steps. And the first one is like table stakes, right? And you hear this part all the time is environment. But the big thing that we're a little bit different about is we don't just talk about the brown noise and the red amber light and all the things. But we are actually all safe nursery certified. So we are ambassadors for safe sleep. So believe it or not, there's like over 20,000 unsafe products on Amazon alone that are marketed for sleep that are actually not safe for
Mhm.
sleep and that have provided injury.
Oh,
Um,
we could talk for
I
hours.
mean, seriously, for hours. Or just like little things like realizing that, cords shouldn't be any more than, or shouldn't be 5 feet away from it, and all these things.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
first thing we do is we make sure your child's going to be sleeping in there, hopefully, right, for a very solid amount of times. Let's make sure it's safe.
Mhm.
Let's make sure it's optimized. Let's make sure that you have the right tools to be able to have the right temperature in there, right? Because 70 degrees in Florida is not the same as 70 degrees in California. And so we kind of help you customize on that route. The second thing, which I will say is our absolute secret recipe, and one thing that honestly we haven't seen any sleep coach, at least that we have actually interviewed to join our team, understand, is what we call is the magic routine. So every child is born with a specific amount of sleep pressure or sleep propensity. And so it's actually really important that you create that schedule that aligns to them and what they do naturally. So we can, believe it or not, actually see patterns of how a child is sleeping today, marry that with what is gestationally appropriate in order to help them create what's called the magic routine that helps them fall asleep faster.
Mhm.
And so, how that works is that now, when you go into your sleep training, which we call bedtime strategies, and we have a method called association fading, where you are in room, you are responsive, you're actually responding the whole way. It's a combination of voice, touch, pat, but we give you a very specific script based on a child's temperament,
Mhm.
whether they are able to sit up, stand up, how vocal they are, maybe what they have done in the past. And then that will help them understand the new sleep routine where they can sleep on their own. When you marry that with the ability to already fall asleep faster because you've worked on those natural factors, along with, feeding, we have some pretty crazy results. So, like the average of our families is usually around 30 to 40 minutes on the first night. Baby is falling asleep on their own when they follow our recommendations. If you ask most sleep coaches who are certified through Ferber, which we were too, they will tell you to communicate 90 minutes to 2 hours. Like it's a massive difference when we found out, like, if you just prepare them, it's
Which
crazy.
makes
And
parents
then
not even want to do sleep training because
exactly.
they're already sleep deprived, and that just sounds awful.
It sounds so awful. And I mean, like, and to not feel like you can't do anything. You can. You can actually intervene. You just have to intervene in the right way, right? It's like a teaching method, right? You're helping support your child to realize what a routine can look like. And then we go into the last part, which is where most programs actually end, is regression proof. And I know you have questions about regression proofing
I
a
would
little
love
bit.
for you to touch on it because I know I could keep you so long, Mika. I want to be respectful of your time. So go ahead and touch on
No.
it now. Seriously.
So, the last phase that we go into is regression proofing because we there's actually a lot of evidence and discussion on like what regression actually is, and I also think that we misunderstand it as a society because we have normalized sleep deprivation so much that when sleep doesn't happen or it breaks or whatever, it's really easy to blame it on regression.
Guilty.
And
I'm
it's
so
like,
guilty right
oh,
now.
this is happening.
I'm
And
so
it's
humble to be here, though. I'm learning.
and it's funny because, I have family members who, and we have a lot of we have a lot of clients who are like, well, I waited this long because like, well, 4 month came. It was like, we're just making it through the 4 month regression. And so then they like wait closer to 7 and 8 months. And they're like, well, maybe it's the 8 month regression. So like, let's just keep waiting. Well, if we actually look at where developmental milestones actually occur, right? It's actually 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 15. I mean, like, how long do you want to wait? I guess. Um,
We'll sleep
and
when they're 18.
yeah, when they're 18 or like when they're. So I think the one thing that is really interesting though is sleep regressions will interrupt sleep, but they're not the cause of long-term sleep obstacles or unsustainable things, right? So they're gonna provide you some things in the road, and really when we talk about sleep regression, it's because during those times milestones occur, babies, toddlers, they get distracted. They're really excited. Ooh, I found my hands. Oh, I can, walk for the first time. Your mind goes idle. Think about when you're working on a project for work, right? Your mind goes idle and all of a sudden you're thinking about all the things and what you need to put in your PowerPoint or whatever it is you're thinking about. It's the same thing. However, it doesn't go on for months or
Mhm.
weeks, right? Eventually that novelty, goes away. And
Yep.
so, what the really interesting is, and what we've been able to help our families is I bet you couldn't guess when nap transitions and schedule changes need to happen.
I would be embarrassed. I can't say it on the podcast, Mika. Don't do me like that. Don't do me dirty like that.
It's the same exact times as those regressions happen.
So, of course, there's
So
adjustments.
there's adjustment that needs to happen every single time. But if you're focused on the actual regression, the development piece, and you don't take into account like, oh, I should have been preparing for that schedule change before, understanding that maybe their sleep cycles are changing, that's when regressions kind of really fall apart on the sleep front. Because even when you think about infants, right? They're starting, let's say, wake times are maybe around 1.5 to
Mhm.
1.75, and then they go just 3, 4 months later, it's double that.
Mhm.
It doesn't change overnight to all of a sudden they can be in that
Right.
space. Like there's an incremental biological change that happens, and that's what actually gets in the way because your baby will be used to sleeping at a certain time, but biologically that's not what they need. So it ends up in wake ups, fights at bedtime, really long wake ups in the middle of the night. So what we do is we kind of prepare our families to understand the signs, how to transition so that
Mhm.
you can kind of move past that. So we actually got a text message from a client actually. Chelsea sent it to me and we helped her like right before her 4 month sleep regression. And she had sent something before and was like, oh my gosh, I was just bracing myself, but like we didn't go through it. We didn't go through any regression. Like he's still sleeping. He had maybe one or
Yes.
two days where he had struggled. And then she sent a text message actually yesterday. I just wanted to tell you our little guy just started daycare the past couple of weeks. And the transition has been seamless thanks to sleep training with you guys 4 months ago. He is the only child at daycare that they can just put in a crib and walk out of the room and trust he'll fall asleep on his own. You can see he's so confident, happy, and it feels like such a win for us, especially when we think about where we started. I know sleep training can get some hate on social media, but I hope you're ignoring it. You guys are so amazing. And so,
Oh,
like, things like that is
yay.
like, so baby is past 8 months. So, like, we've had plenty of regressions to get through.
I
So,
love that. I love
Yeah.
it. Well, I know there's moms who honestly, probably while they were listening, they went down and clicked the link because what you're saying is speaking to their soul and they feel hope. Hope is so important. Mamas, it can get better. And this is why we are working on just tons and tons of collaborations that we can do with them because we know that moms sleeping here. I am mommy all the time, so that word comes out of my mouth way too
Mommy.
often. But moms getting enough sleep impacts everything. And if you're a mom that doesn't sleep, your kids don't sleep, you're nodding your head right now, you might have a tear in your eye. Like it's a real thing. It impacts every single aspect of your life. And so we're going to collaborate more and I will continue to learn. You all know I'm cutting my slice of humble pie and I'm serving it to myself because I know that my kids don't even sleep perfectly. And I have tons I could learn from these ladies. And I just think that they're incredible. I'm so intrigued by their approach and just all the information that they have to offer us. So Mica, we're going to be sharing tons of information. If you have links that you want to add in the podcast
Yay.
description, you just send those my way. But is there anything before I let you go today that you would just like to share with the Moms Working Overtime community?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Alana, for having me here. And I think, our biggest passion is just making moms feel like you're not doing anything wrong.
Mhm.
We're all playing the same game. No decision you made up to this point is the wrong one. You get to decide what your future looks like, whether that's with sleep or anything else. And just know that there are communities out there where you won't be judged and you'll be embraced. And, thank you all for joining us and come follow us on Instagram, Rested. Mama Happy Baby. There's an underscore between all of them. And then you'll find us. You can go on our website. We have free training that we actually have to help you understand what sleep actually is and a ton of resources. But we're so grateful to be on this podcast.
And one more thing too, for mamas that are listening and relate to both of our stories of, okay, so we chased this corporate life or this career life and it wasn't for us. You have a little something coming for those moms too, right? Do you want to hint at that?
We do.
Let's do it.
Yes. Which is so funny because when we talk about the identity change, right? I actually just recently read a book. It was, I think, The Six Working Geniuses and realizing like maybe what, my working genius is and how that's changed over time. And if you've taken an Enneagram at any point, you'll
Oh,
notice
yes.
actually pre and post mom, you will be different. So you clearly have to have a different identity. But I have realized what leaving that old identity has done for me, leaving the corporate life, making that change to become a pediatric sleep coach that has, found a way to replace that life. I had never thought that I would be able to be a mom who runs a small business and homeschools, and maybe more on that, why we've decided to do that without jumping into this. So we have launched a Rested Mama Academy for moms who are maybe looking, and this speaks to you, this career speaks to you, and you will be getting some amazing training, one on how we do things differently on sleep, because we have a 99% success rate. I think, are like a little hidden secret, but we do things differently that I know matters and helps for families. And then, I have a huge background, obviously, in business growth, development, marketing, and that is actually my life and my superpower. And so we are actually going to be doing some business coaching to help you make it to your goals. And that has launched the Rested Mama Academy. You can find more information at the Rested Mama Academy on Instagram as well. If maybe it speaks to you that you are passionate about families and sleep and you want to make that transition.
Yes, and reach out. It can't hurt to just get the information because I know there's mamas. I get these messages all the time of, hey, how do I do what you did? How do I transition out? It's scary, which by the way, it is scary. I don't know if we can take that away, but it is scary because you're leaving what's traditional. You're leaving societal expectations, societal norms, but reach out and ask the questions because I do think it's an amazing opportunity to look into something that may allow you to show up as the mom that you want to show up as. It's not that you can't show up as a mom and be a working mom, but in your mind, if your heart is calling you to something different, explore the opportunity. And so it's worth it. Whether you explore sleep training with them or you explore the opportunity through the Rested Mama Academy, let them know that MWO sent you because, like I said, we're going to be doing future collaborations with them and our communities will mesh and just hopefully be better resources for you on all fronts. And just reminding you, Mama, that if you don't hear this in your day-to-day life, you will always hear it when you come to the Moms Working Overtime podcast, is that you're doing an amazing job, okay? I know you are tired. I know you're overworked, and I know that you're overstimulated, but you're doing a really amazing job, and we will talk to you again soon. If you loved this episode of Moms Working Overtime, do me a favor. Share it on social media or send it to another mom to remind her that you love her and that she's doing such an amazing job. There's nothing more incredible that we can do in this community than remind other mamas of their strength. I'm so glad you were here today, and just know that I appreciate you an overtime amount.